guy is. Howard Jarvis. Those of you may remember back in the 1970s, before Prop 13, your property taxes on your home or your business property would go up as land prices went up in California. Sometimes they would just soar, and literally people were being taxed out of their homes. And then Howard came along with Prop 13, and I love this quote of his. If there's something about the government you don't like, get together and do something about it. And that's what Howard did, led the fight for Prop 13, got it qualified. You know, it was even before the internet. And it was, you know, how they do it way back then. Maybe they had like stone tablets or something. And passed Prop 13 in 1978, started a tax revolt, but he realized that the forces that want more of our money weren't going away. So he needed something permanent to try to defend the taxpayers. So he formed the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association. And he led that, and then until he passed away in 1986. And since then, and I'm sure our speaker is going to tell us more of exactly what they've done, they passed additional initiatives, and they've defended the ones we passed in court from the tax raisers. Things get a little bit lonely up there in Sacramento. Here we have a scene of some people from the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association fending off all the army of tax raisers. So it is a lonely battle up there, but we appreciate their fortitude. You know, California is, they are raising taxes, and California is changing its official theme song. I think you may have not heard this in the news. From California Dreamin' to California Taxin'. So be sure to catch that song. We're very pleased here to have the current president of the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, Jon Coupal. Started his legal career with the Pacific Legal Foundation, which is similar to Pacific Justice, but they focus more on economic and property rights, whereas Pacific Justice Institute and Brad Dacus is more on religious freedom, First Amendment rights. After going there, he became the legislative director for Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, leading both their litigation and their lobbying efforts in Sacramento. You saw a picture of him at work there, leading his lobbying efforts there in Sacramento. So with no further ado, we are pleased to have Jon Coupal, and they are the preeminent taxpayers organization in California, maybe the entire nation. One of the few organizations, along with Tea Party, that is not trying to get more of our taxpayer dollars. Enough of me. Welcome to the stage, Jon Coupal.
Okay, is this the one? I'll try not to get feedback on this one. And I like that one picture. I forgot to bring my lightsaber with me. I remember that battle. It is a pleasure to be here and to see so many active individuals who are very interested in defending liberty, property rights, the rule of law. Do you remember the rule of law? It's coming back to the United States. After all those Obama appointees, we now have, and one of the preeminent things that President Trump has done is his judicial appointments. But in any event, I think you want to hear about Proposition 13. We are now celebrating the 41st anniversary of Prop 13, and our organization has a very simple mission statement. We're dedicated to the protection of Proposition 13, the advancement of taxpayer rights, the right to limited taxation, and the right to vote on tax increases, and the right to economical, equitable, and efficient use of taxpayer dollars. And on that last point, I think it's very important to keep in mind that not only does California have some of the highest taxes in the United States, but the way that they spend our tax dollars is criminal. Exhibit A, high-speed rail. You think it's coming down here? It's never, I think they're building it between Corcoran and Fresno or something right now. But right now they are spending $1 million a day on that project for a project that we told them 14 years ago could never be completed. And yet they moved ahead. So heavy taxes and extraordinarily wasteful government spending. A lot of you are our members. For those of you who are not our members, I do have some membership brochures over there, but if you're one of our members, then you probably know how Prop 13 works. It took an average property tax rate in California of 2.6% and cut it by more than half to 1%. That is your property tax rate. It's 1%. But that wasn't the biggest problem with property taxes in the mid-70s. The real problem was, with so many people moving in, the aerospace industry coming in, that the market value of your home was rapidly escalating. So even if you had a reasonable tax rate, if the value of your property doubled, guess what happened to your property tax bill? It doubled. So as a secondary, I would say almost primary provision of Proposition 13, the taxable value, not your market value, but the taxable value of your home can only go up 2% a year. And it's reassessed when it changes hands. So Prop 13 has worked very, very well. How well? Since 1978, California property owners have saved over $500 billion. That's money that's left in your pocket. Now, Howard Jarvis would be very pleased if he saw the organization, if he saw what we were doing today. He would not be very pleased if he saw California today. He'd be scratching his head and said, what is going on here? But the reality is, he'd be very proud of the fact that Proposition 13 achieved its primary objective of allowing people to stay in their homes. Howard Jarvis also wanted Prop 13 to limit the growth in government. And I gotta be honest with you, on that score, Proposition 13 has not been a success. Government is the #1 growth industry in the state of California. They continue to find ways to tax us beyond Prop 13, beyond property taxes. They find ways to regulate us to death, so much so that a lot of people are now moving out of the state of California. There's a lot of bad news in California, but there's some good news and some opportunities. So I don't want to be a complete downer because, well, they do have an open bar here, so that helps, I'm sure. But the reality is, you've seen it. If you've been in California for a long period of time, you have seen the steady decline of this state. And it's not getting any better anytime soon. But I do want to give you some hope later on. The good news, if there is any, and there is that even though the body politic in California has moved steadily leftward, the reality is Proposition 13 remains remarkably popular. In fact, the polling that we do indicates that if Prop 13 were on the ballot today, it would pass by almost the same 2/3 margin that it did back in 1978. Now think about that. Even though this state is far more progressive, far more liberal than it was 41 years ago, Prop 13 remains very popular. This is something you should keep in mind when you're talking to other people who may be liberal or politically unengaged, is that people's homes are the #1 thing that they want to keep. It's their #1 possession, and that's even true for liberals. What we need to do is explain to everybody how Prop 13 works, how important it is, and what it does to allow people to stay in their homes. So Prop 13 remains very, very popular. The first priority of our organization is to stop these relentless attacks on Proposition 13. When did that start? It started the day after Prop 13 was passed, because the liberals filed a lawsuit against Proposition 13. We took that all the way to the California Supreme Court, and we defeated the assault on Prop 13, an assault consisting of many constitutional arguments. They were all ruled not meritorious. 20 years later, a similar lawsuit was brought in federal court that went all the way to the United States Supreme Court. And again, we defended Proposition 13, and it remains basically intact. The biggest loss that we had was back in the year 2000. There was a proposal on the ballot to lower the 2/3 vote for local school bonds down to 55%. Never mind the fact that most school bonds, even at 2/3, were passing. People want good schools, and if the school district makes a good case for additional bonded indebtedness to build a new high school, to build a new elementary school, people would listen, and they'd say, okay, yeah, I like that, or no, we don't think it's a good idea, or lower the amount you're asking for. But there was an engagement in the process in the old days. Now that when they lowered it to 55%, the other side has all the resources. They have all the unions, they have all the contractors, and now that we have a 55% school bonds, all the school bonds pass automatically. I would ask you, do you think schools are any better than they were back in the year 2000? The answer is no. The answer is no. So that 2/3 vote for local bonds and local taxes is critically important, and that is a provision of Proposition 13, and we will continue to fight it. And if you're ever in discussion with a liberal who says, you don't like the 2/3 vote, that's allowing the minority to dictate the majority. Well, the answer to that is, one definition of democracy is two wolves and a sheep voting on what's for dinner. The reality is we have supermajorities in our constitutional framework for a reason. It forces greater consensus. The United States Constitution has 12 different provisions requiring a 2/3 vote. And by the way, before a person can be deprived of life or liberty in a criminal trial, it has to be not a 2/3 vote of a jury, but a unanimous vote of a jury. That is a supermajority right there. But because depriving someone of their life or liberty is so critical, it's the most horrific thing a government can do, that's why we subject that to the super duper majority. Now, you've probably heard about all the assaults on Proposition 13. The big one that's in the news right now is the so-called split roll. The split roll is this effort that we see year after year after year to deprive commercial property of the benefits of Proposition 13. We hear from the political left, Prop 13 created a loophole for businesses. It did no such thing. California has taxed all property at the same rate since the 1800s. Prop 13 did not change that. California has always had what we call a unified tax roll. And what these people want to do is they want to blow that up. And they have admitted that, they say, well, we're just coming after businesses. We're going after the big corporations. Baloney. We've seen the emails, and they say, first we go after businesses, then we go after homeowners. So they have a political agenda here, which I think you guys can figure out because it's never enough money for these people. There is a ballot measure, speaking of a split roll, it has qualified for the 2020 ballot. It would deprive businesses of Prop 13's protections, and it's qualified for the 2020 ballot. But they've got a problem. There's a lot of mistakes in that initiative. So within the last 2 weeks, they refiled an initiative that's just as bad as the first one. They've changed some dates and they've changed some of the formulas, but it's just as bad. But it's a show of how after spending $10 million getting signatures for that previous one, they're now trying to redo it. Now, that to me is a sign of weakness. And it's also a sign that they've seen the same polling we have, and that is that the split roll proposal does not poll very well. Now, if you were to ask the man or woman on the street, do you think commercial property should be taxed at full market value? People go, yeah, I guess so. But if you ask them, do you think we should get rid of a part of Prop 13? No. So when we fight this battle, we will be sure to characterize it as a direct assault on Proposition 13 because that's exactly what it is. There is another provision, another proposal, to destroy the 2/3 vote for local special taxes, sales taxes, parcel taxes. Parcel taxes are property taxes over and above your 1%. Sales taxes and local bonds. That's called Assembly Constitutional Amendment number 1. And It was, now, keep in mind, to get a proposed constitutional amendment through the legislature and ultimately on the ballot, it takes a 2/3 vote of both houses of the California legislature. Folks, we're in trouble because the Democrats have 2/3 plus in both houses. This is the first legislative session where that's happened. We have been able to stop them in the past because they've been very close to the 2/3 vote in either the Assembly or the Senate. But now they've got it. Well, a funny thing happened on the way to the tax increase, and that is a number of the Democrats either abstained or voted no on ACA 1. Why? Well, maybe, do you think they found religion? Or do you think they're afraid for their political lives? So we inundated, and some of you know David Wolf, our lobbyist, a brilliant young man who frequently is he's always in the Capitol, and he's the one guy arguing against bigger government. He will be standing in a committee hearing, and he will be the only person testifying against a tax increase, and on the other side is a conga line of lobbyists for local governments or special interests wanting higher taxes. And we've been very successful in stopping that, much because of his good work. But ACA 1 has not died. You know, tax increases in the legislature like vampires. You ever seen the vampire movie where you kill them and everybody goes, "Yay, we killed it." The vampire comes up again. "Oh, we gotta kill it again. I gotta kill it. We gotta drive a stake through its heart." Okay, he's dead now. And he gets up again. You gotta put some garlic around him. Tax increases out of the legislature are like that. They never go away. Now, the good news is we defeated ACA 1, but under the rules of the California legislature, it can come up for reconsideration one time between now and next Thursday, because next Thursday is the end of the legislative session. So we are watching that very carefully. It's died once, it's 95% dead, but we're not going to rest until that awful proposal is 100% dead. So ACA 1 is a direct threat. More bad news is, of course, the California legislature has proposed $269 billion in new tax increases on a budget of about $140 billion of the general fund. So they want about double the general fund with all these tax increase proposals. A lot of that, of course, is single-payer health care that they want. They've proposed local income taxes. How's that for a scary proposal? Your local city being able to impose an income tax. Water tax, gun tax, universal health care, soda tax, oil severance tax, a carbon intensity tax. Oh, come on. You guys have to open your mind a little bit. Carbon intensity. So, how many people have had beef here tonight? A hamburger or something? Okay. So, under this proposal, the food that you buy would be somehow determined how much carbon intensity went into the preparation of that food. And we all know that cows fart and the flatulence. I'm sorry, I used a bad word. So products would be gauged on their carbon intensity, all to be determined by a new army of bureaucrats in Sacramento. Fortunately, we think that thing's going to be dead pretty soon. One of the things that happened, and I just want to touch on a couple more things, and then open up for questions if that's okay, Greg. One of the reasons I think they got scared about ACA 1 is that next to San Francisco, the city of Los Angeles is one of the most liberal cities in America. And we all know how it's for the kids. You know, all the schools, school bonds pass, partial taxes for schools pass, because we all know it's for the kids. It's not for the kids, it's for the unions, but forget that for a moment. The reality is, school tax proposals pass because of the sympathy that Californians have for kids. There was a partial tax proposal in the city of Los Angeles by the LA Unified School District called Measure EE. And they needed a 2/3 vote to get this new tax, big tax, for the kids. They needed 2/3. They got 46%. We, in the vernacular, we kicked their posteriors really, really hard. Keep in mind, these are not easy fights. This was a very tough, brutal fight. A lot of volunteers, a lot of help from the business community, which we need sometimes, but a lot of grassroots involvement and talk radio. John and Ken and other radio programs have been outstanding in shining a light of day on these tax increases. So California may be a dark cloud, but we're starting to see this silver lining about people, and what does Tea Party stand for? Taxed enough already, right? We're taxed enough already. I'm beginning to see a little bit of resurgence, notwithstanding how liberal this state is. And how bad is it? It's bad. Highest income tax rate in America, 13.3%. Highest state sales tax in America. Highest gas tax. Used to be second highest gas tax, but now it's number one. And even with Prop 13, they say, well, you guys have Prop 13, you got low property taxes. Not true. Out of 50 states, we rank 17th out of 50 states in per capita property tax collections. So it's a high property tax state. Highest cost of living, highest poverty rate. Our effective poverty rate is higher than the state of Mississippi. You don't believe me? Drive through South Central LA and look at the tent cities there. We do have a distinction of ranking 50th out of 50 states by CEO Magazine as a place to do business for 14 years in a row. So we haven't improved our business climate. The result of all this, of course, is the number of businesses that have picked up and left, the number of individuals who have picked up and left. Net domestic out-migration out of California, what that is, forget international migration, either legal or illegal, but just people moving in and among the several states. We had more than 1 million people move out than moved in. Where are they going? They're going to Texas, they're going to Memphis and Nashville, they're going to the Carolinas, they're going to Georgia, they're going to Nevada, they're going to Arizona. Because these are states that do not punish productive individuals and productive businesses. So we need to stem that tide. We need to turn California back into a state that attracts productive people, a state that does not reward laziness, a state that enforces the rule of law, a state that brings back public safety as a priority as opposed to catch and release criminals. We need to bring California back to a place that it was back in the 1960s or 70s. And by the way, every time there's a perceived problem, the progressives have a government solution. You know, maybe they ought to just let people be people. You know, that's a big... The California legislature does not understand free market principles at all. If you go and you start talking before a legislative committee about letting the market work, they look at you like you're from outer space. What are you talking about? We're government. We know better. Well, no, you don't. So anyway, I want to thank you for inviting me here. A lot of you are members. Very much appreciate it. For those of you who aren't members, we have some membership brochures here. We have a couple of newsletters left over from last quarter. We got a new publication coming out relatively soon. And please go to our website. Our website is updated about twice a day. And we have some tools on there called Taxpayer Action Tools. How to do a Public Records Act request. How to repeal a utility users tax. How to oppose a 55% bond. There's about a dozen taxpayer action tools that you will find very useful because we're all in this together and we need to turn this state around and reclaim California as the land of the free and the home of the brave. Thank you very much.
All right, let's see if we can do this without getting undue feedback. You have a question lined up.
Questions? We have a microphone over here. Yes, right here. Okay.
Not a question so much as a request. My wife and I run the Tea Party booth, and we need some literature from you on combating the proposition that is attempting to undo.
Okay, how soon? How soon? Okay, shoot us an email, and send an email to info@hjta.org. Tell them the event you need it for and how much you need.
Okay.
Thank you. Yes, next. Okay, next question. Do we have any questions? Yes.
I want to find out if you know anything about the ACA. I understand in California now, in 2019, tax return, that they're going to be charging people $695 for adults, penalties at 347.50 per child for 2.5% of your household income if you don't have medical insurance. And on top of that,
Oh,
yes,
yes.
they're going to use the money to buy cell phones and medical insurance for illegals,
Yes.
but not U.S. citizens. Can you help? Can you explain that?
Yeah, that's true. Remember, one of the things that President Trump did and the Republicans is they took away the individual mandate for Obamacare. The individual mandate is a fancy name for tax. Tax. It is a tax. It walks like a tax. It quacks like a tax. It's a tax. Well, of course, California, with its Trump derangement syndrome, wants to poke Trump and say, well, if you're going to take away the individual mandate, we're going to reimpose it here. Yay! We're going to impose a tax on millennials and productive young people and give them money to pay for health care for people who are not citizens of the United States. This makes no sense. It is regrettably constitutional. I have not seen a credible legal argument against it, but it is just stupid on steroids to do that. And again, another reason why a lot of young people are moving out of the state of California, because we may educate them here, but what happens when they graduate from college and they either have to live with mom and dad or they have to move out of state to get their jobs, because the job market in other states is better. Yes.
Right, let's try this microphone over here.
Yes, I wanted to know, what about the $21 billion that California has in reserves? What is that for?
Well, the $21 billion we have in reserves is the question. The reality is that is the budgetary surplus. That is the money that came in over what we were spending last year. However, for those of you who took elementary accounting, a budget is like an income statement. It's money in and money out in a fixed period of time. It's not a balance sheet. Balance sheets reflect liabilities. And we have nearly $1 trillion of liabilities in the state of California. Liabilities meaning debt. Debt meaning mostly unfunded pension obligations, obligations made to public employee retirees for health care benefits, general obligation bonds, certificates of participation, revenue bonds, redevelopment bonds. You add up all the government debt in the state of California and it approaches about $1 trillion. So $21 billion is a grain of sand compared to the total liabilities held by the state of California.
You mentioned the 1 million people that have left.
Step forward.
You mentioned the 1 million people that have left the state in the last year. What came in, what went out? And revenue, has that been tracked as to the loss of revenue generating potential for the state of California in any way over any period of time?
Yeah, his question is the million people that moved out relative to the people who moved in. I don't have the figures right in front of me, but keep in mind that a lot of the people that moved out had the capacity to move out. A lot of them were college educated. A lot of them were not college educated, but were skilled labor. For example, if you're a diesel mechanic in the Bay Area, you can't afford rent, but if you're a diesel mechanic in Houston, you can afford a 2,200 square foot house. One of the things that influences that, though, is that some of the people who moved in were highly educated engineers working for Silicon Valley. So it's not really, so you probably had, half a dozen individuals who came in and making $5 million right out of college because they got, good engineering degrees from Harvard or something. But that probably skews the system. I don't know. I think the census data will probably reflect it's still a net, over the long term, it's going to be a net loss. There's another reason it's going to be a net loss, and that is California is bending over backward to drive high tech out of the state of California. Look at what they're doing to Uber and Lyft. I mean, it's, high tech is the goose that's laying the golden egg. You don't cut the head off, but that's what our policy leaders are doing right now.
As long as I was paying attention properly, you mentioned that the threat to the commercial business portion of Prop 13 is coming up on 2020, possibly, if it qualified. Is there any similar proposal for trying to qualify anything, any attack against Prop 13 on the residential side for 2020?
Well, yes. The ACA 1, which would lower the 2/3 vote for partial taxes. Partial taxes hit residential properties disproportionately relative to business properties because many of them are flat rate taxes, like $200 per parcel. $200 per parcel for a small home is a bigger hit than a $200 per parcel for a Walmart.
So that's all one measure?
No, it is not one measure. Yeah, it's two separate measures. Split roll has qualified for the 2020 ballot. ACA 1 is 95% dead, and we're trying to keep it dead. You're welcome.
In 2015, Holly Mitchell and Lonnie Hancock, Democrats from Berkeley and Los Angeles, introduced a split roll resolution in the state legislature. It was called Lifting Children Out of Poverty Act. It failed. They came back, and now it's going to be on the 2020 ballot. Any part of Proposition 13 that is repealed, the rest of the proposition is also going to be endangered. I feel that California needs a Marshall Plan. What we need is an initiative of our own. We are reactive, we should be proactive. I believe that we should have an initiative like Howard Jarvis placed back in 1978 to do something about our property taxes. Right. I believe that we should reduce our property taxes because the people today, if nothing's done, the taxes are going to be tripled just like they were in 1978. My taxes went from $1,300 to $3,900 in 1978, and if you don't think it's going to happen again, I'm sorry, but it's going to happen. So we have to do something. We have to be proactive. We have to have a Marshall Plan. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. There is absolutely a good argument for going on offense, and we've done that many times. We sponsored Prop 63 in 1986, and many of you know Prop 218 in 1996 to close some of the loopholes in Proposition 13. We also were a co-sponsor of Proposition 26 to clamp down on the abuse of taxes disguised as fees. And last year, we were part of a coalition to qualify an omnibus, I hate that word because it sounds too government type, but it was a comprehensive pro-taxpayer initiative, but some of our business partners dropped out at the last moment, so we had to put that on hold. But we're looking at that. We're looking at opportunities to go back on offense because I think you're right. I think the time is getting right for that. Thank you.
Hi, I just want to know, do you think there'll ever be another chance for it to go on the ballot about being able to move more than one time with Proposition 13? Will it ever go on the ballot again? Yeah, I hope so. She said, I think you're talking about the portability issue where you could take your Prop 13 base to a new residence. For those of you who do not know this, if your home is protected on Proposition 13, you can move to another home of equal or lesser value
in the same county and take that property tax base with you so you don't have to pay full market value on the new place that you just bought. You can also take it to another county if that county has an agreement with your county to make those kinds of exchanges. The California Association of Realtors proposed something called, it was Prop 5, that would have expanded portability statewide and removed some of those restrictions, like you don't have to buy a house of equal or lesser value. You could buy a house of greater value and still take your Prop 13 value with it, and be able to do it multiple times. I don't know what their intentions are. That issue is really important for the California Association of Realtors. If they do pull the trigger on that, we will support them again. But right now, that's probably not our #1 priority, but as important as it is. Thank you.
Business has generally adopted an appeasement attitude towards the Democrats in Sacramento because they have the power over them. That's nice business you got there. You wouldn't want anything to happen to it now, would you?
Yeah.
Is there a point here, do you see any of a point coming where business starts to say, you know, we're not going to get boiled alive like the proverbial frog in the pan.
Right.
We're going to fight back.
We saw that with Measure EE. Look, when the BizFed of Los Angeles and even the Los Angeles Chamber of Commerce, which always supports tax increases, don't ask me why, but the Los Angeles Chamber of Commerce is a very progressive Chamber of Commerce, always supporting the mayor, always supporting tax increases. They came out and opposed Measure EE. And believe me, the business groups that oppose Measure EE, they were threatened. I mean, overtly threatened by the mayor and his political people, saying, we will never let you do business in this city again. I mean, it was brutal. So that's the one good thing about Tea Party organizations and the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association, is they have no leverage over us. There's nothing they can do to threaten us. They say, well, we'll go right to your members. My response to that is, make my day. Go ahead. Our members, our 200,000 members, like what we do. So, but the business community quite frequently is very vulnerable to the discretionary acts of government, particularly building permits and stuff like that. Yes.
The city of Yucaipa has decided to impose on our tax rolls the trash bill, the bi-monthly trash bill. Is that constitutional? They've done it all. They decided to just unilaterally go ahead and do it.
Yeah, as long as the trash fee still complies with Proposition 218, meaning that the amount of the fee cannot exceed the cost of the service to that fee payer, they can put it on the property tax bill. Now you wonder, why would they do that? The reason many cities are moving their trash and sewer and things like that to the property tax bill is because it immediately becomes a lien on your property. It's not unconstitutional, but it's their leverage over ultimate payment in case somebody walks away.
This woman looks vaguely familiar.
I just have one comment before I ask my question on the issue about moving your property tax.
Yes.
You have to close the house you live in, and then you have 2 years to reinvest in a new property.
Yeah, the rules for moving your Prop 13 base to a new residence are very strict. Talk to your county assessor. The assessors are usually pretty good about explaining it, and they have the forms. You have to fill out the forms.
Okay, what I was going to mention is years back, the state of California made their budget on their investment of 7% on the investments for their unfunded liabilities. And at that time, it was totally unreasonable because we were in the hole and it was like 2 and 3%. Now the stock market is so good and it's up so high, are we still in a position of not having enough money for our unfunded liabilities?
We certainly do not have enough money for unfunded liabilities, number one, because PERS and STIRS have the uncanny ability to really screw up their investment portfolio. The 1 year, I think it was 2 years ago, when the stock market did about 9%, PERS investments did 1%. So there have been years that they have lost ground. Generally, they beat the market, but not by much. So no. The fact that here's the problem. When we get a recession, we're losing ground now with a strong economy. If we have a recession, the PERS portfolio goes into the toilet, and then our liability, meaning you and me, our liability to make those payments will go up. So that is the perverse thing about public employee pensions, is that when there's a recession, the public employees are protected, but the people who are in the private sector not only have to suffer a bad economy, they have to make up the difference in the public employee pensions. We'll take time for one more?
One more. You got a good one.
So I just wanted to say that I moved from Los Angeles County to San Bernardino County. And when I was going through all that, I used the Howard Jarvis Taxpayers Association staff to help me. They were very helpful, and they told me the counties that reciprocated. And we sold a house for $615,000. 3 bedroom, 1 bath stucco, 1,100 square feet for 600 plus. And we bought a house bigger, better, nicer here for 300. And we can build up to that amount that we sold the house for and still keep that rate. And I learned all that from your guys.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Janice, she didn't mention it. Okay. She's a former Democrat.
Yes.
She has the distinction, probably uniquely in this room here, of being the only person to ever be thrown out of a meeting by Howard Jarvis.
Yeah. But that's when she didn't know better. I mean, look, the reality is, what is a conservative? It's a liberal who's been mugged. All right. Thank you all very much, and I will be around if you've got individual questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much.